The noonday sun scorched the small town of Red Hollow, burning down on faces that had gathered for a spectacle no one would forget. Dust swirled in the dry air, and the creak of a wooden platform echoed through the stillness. A young woman stood barefoot upon the gallows, her wrists bound, her white dress torn and stained with dirt. Her eyes, pale and unfocused, looked toward nothing, for she could see nothing. Her name was Clara May, the blind daughter of a seamstress who had died the previous winter. They accused her of witchcraft because a drought had struck the valley and cattle had died. Someone whispered that the blind girl cursed the land. Fear needed a victim, and Clara was the easiest one to blame. The sheriff read from a crumpled paper, voice trembling not from mercy, but guilt. For bringing misfortune upon this town by unnatural means, Clara May is to be punished by hanging, as decreed by the Council of Red Hollow. The crowd murmured, some curious, some cruel, but most were silent, unable to meet her sightless eyes. The sun burned overhead, bright as judgment itself. At the edge of the crowd, a tall man leaned against his horse. His name was Wyatt Hale, a rancher from 2 valleys over, a quiet man known for paying fair wages and keeping to himself. He'd come to town for supplies, not justice. But what he saw that day made the dust in his throat turn to iron. Clara stood straight despite the ropes around her hands. Her chin lifted toward the sound of the sheriff's boots. "I didn't curse anyone," she said softly. "I prayed for rain like the rest of you." Someone spat from the crowd, "And the rain never came." Her lips trembled, but she didn't bow her head. "Maybe it didn't come because you stopped believing in mercy." The hangman hesitated, rope in hand. The sheriff motioned, but his voice faltered. "Any man here willing to pay her fine, 10 cents, can take her into custody as a servant." He said it as a formality. No one ever did. Wyatt stepped forward through the heat. The boards underfoot groaned as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a single weathered dime. The sound of it dropping into the dust was louder than a gunshot. "I'll take her," he said quietly. The crowd turned. Laughter rippled through a few men. "You buying yourself a beggar, Hale?" One shouted. Wyatt met their eyes, his voice calm. "A beggar's worth more than a coward." The sheriff looked uncertain. "You sure about this? She can't see, can't work a wrench easy." "I'll figure it out." Wyatt stepped closer to the platform. "Untie her." Clara's chin tilted toward the sound of his boots. "Who are you?" "Just a man tired of watching good folks hang for no reason." The sheriff hesitated, then sliced the rope. Clara stumbled forward, catching herself on the edge of the platform. Wyatt reached up and took her hand, rough, calloused, warm with life. The crowd's muttering grew louder, but he didn't hear them. He guided her down the steps, steady and gentle, like leading someone out of a storm. When her feet touched the ground, she whispered, "You didn't have to do that." "Maybe not," he said, "but someone should have a long time ago." He helped her onto his horse, the leather warm beneath the sunlight. The crowd parted as he rode out, dust rising around them. No one stopped him. No one dared. As the town faded behind, Clara spoke quietly. "You think they'll let you keep me?" "They'll forget by sundown," he said. "People like that don't remember what mercy looks like." The road stretched before them, golden hills, a horizon that shimmered with heat. Clara sat straight, listening to every sound. The wind in the grass, the creak of the saddle, the quiet strength in his breathing. For the first time in months, she felt something like peace. Wyatt glanced at her now and then. There was a calm in her face that unsettled him, the kind of peace born from surviving too much pain. "You got family left?" "No," she said softly. "Just me and the good Lord if he's still listening." He smiled faintly. "Maybe he just sent you a rancher instead." She turned her blind eyes toward his voice and for the first time smiled. The sunlight caught her face, soft and bright, and Wyatt thought he'd never seen anything more beautiful, not in this world of dust and cruelty. As the two rode deeper into the sunlit plains, neither knew what lay ahead. But in the golden silence of the Wild West, under that fierce, forgiving sun, one thing was certain: A woman once condemned had just been given back her life, and for Wyatt Hale, that single dime had just bought something no money in the world could measure: the chance to do right in a world that had forgotten how. The Hale Ranch stretched across miles of open prairie, rolling golden under the sun. The wind moved through tall grass like a whisper from heaven, and the smell of hay and horses filled the air. Wyatt helped Clara down from his horse, his hand steady beneath hers. She stood still for a moment, listening to the sounds, the distant low of cattle, the creak of a windmill, the lazy buzz of bees drifting between sunflowers near the porch. "This is where you live?" she asked softly. "Where I work. Where you'll rest for a while," Wyatt said, his voice calm as the horizon. He led her to the porch, guiding her hand to the rail. "Steps start here. 3 of them." She nodded, memorizing his words, tracing the wood with her fingers. "You're kind, Mr. Hale." "Wyatt," he corrected gently. "And I ain't kind. Just tired of watching folks do cruel things for sport." Inside, the house smelled of cedar and sun-warmed bread. It wasn't fancy. A few rough tables, a big stove, and light streaming through every open window. Wyatt moved around quietly, pouring water into a basin. "You can wash up. I'll bring you something to eat." Clara reached for the basin, fingertips brushing the cool rim. "Thank you, but I can help. I'm not useless," he smiled faintly. "Didn't say you were. You just got here. Take your time." But Clara didn't rest long. By the second morning, she had found her way through half the house by sound alone. The soft click of the stove door, the creak of the floor by the kitchen table, the smell of coffee beans by the window. She moved slow, sure-footed, remembering every step like music. Wyatt came in one morning to find her sweeping the porch, sunlight spilling over her shoulders. "You don't have to do that," he said, leaning on the doorway. "I know," she smiled, "but it feels good to be useful again." Her smile caught him off guard, bright as the sun itself. Days turned into weeks. Clara learned to feed the chickens by touch and sound, to hang the laundry by the wind's direction, and to tell when the horses were restless just by the rhythm of their hooves. And Wyatt found himself talking more than he ever had, about the drought, his late father, the loneliness of open land. She listened quietly, her face turned toward him, as though her sightless eyes could see more than any man ever had. One afternoon, he found her sitting under the old cottonwood tree, humming softly. A foal had wandered up beside her, nuzzling her arm. "He likes you," Wyatt said. "I can tell," she laughed softly. "He's gentle. Like his owner," he chuckled. "Don't let the cattle hear you say that." Then her tone turned quiet. "Why did you save me, Wyatt?" "Really?" He hesitated. "Guess I just saw someone who didn't deserve to hang." She tilted her head. "Or maybe you saw someone you needed to save so you could forgive yourself." The words struck him deep. He didn't answer, not right away. That night, they ate supper by the open window where the evening sun poured gold across the table. Wyatt said almost to himself, "My ma went blind before she passed. Folks didn't help her none. I didn't either. Not enough." Clara reached across, finding his hand. "You're helping me now. Maybe that's how the Lord gives us second chances." For a long while neither spoke. Only the wind and the sound of crickets filled the silence. Days later, rain clouds finally gathered over the valley, the first in nearly a year. Clara stood at the doorway, her face lifted toward the scent of wet earth. "It's raining," she whispered. "First drops just hit the roof," Wyatt said, smiling. She laughed softly, tears shining in her blind eyes. "Guess mercy does come back around, doesn't it?" The rain fell harder, and Wyatt stepped beside her, watching the land drink. He looked at the woman who had been condemned, now standing in his doorway, alive, unbroken, radiant under the light of the storm. He realized then it wasn't him who had saved her, it was she who had saved him.